Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here. Leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you already know that's because when I got up this morning, I decided I was going to make it that way. And as I go through my day, everything's pretty groovy. If something turns out to be ungroovy, Jackie, is that a word? Ungroovy?
Ungroovy? I think it could be, sure.
I just remembered that I started out the day feeling groovy and just take right off where I left off. That's the way it is. Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. And you could probably hear my dog in the background. She's not doing well. We'll say a prayer for her. She's been diagnosed with an enlarged heart, and there's not much that can be done. So it's pushing on her trachea. So if you hear that noise, I know it's there. I want to welcome everybody. I already did that. And as always, you know, before we start the show, I like to get myself centered and situated. If we just take a minute and think about the things that you're grateful for, picture those in your mind, and let's take in a deep breath. And holding those things that you're grateful for, let's just give out a big and let those things flow through, right up through your speaker box and out into the universe so that the universe knows that you're grateful for those things as well. Let's do that one more time with a deep breath. This time I want you to think about your dreams, visions, and goals. What are those dreams, visions, and goals? We're coming down to the wire. Don't worry about it if you haven't accomplished them, but just start out on them again today. So let's think about those for a minute. Deep breath in. And let that breath out with a big and just let those dreams, visions, and goals flow out up into the universe. And for sure, think about allowing the universe, God, Allah, the dude, whatever it is that you consider to be your superpower, the opportunity to make those come true for you. There we go. I'm all set. Are you set, Jack?
I'm all set. It was hard to open my eyes, though. I was feeling really comfortable.
Jackie's recovering from surgery. My co-host is with us today, Jackie Bailey. Yay!
Hello.
And she's recovering from foot surgery for the second time.
Crazy. Yes.
It's crazy.
Hopefully this will be the last time.
The last time she's cured. We're going to cure her. How's things going at the Speak Feed Lead project?
You know, they're a little slow right now. We've got fall classes out there ready and waiting. I think the challenge is that so many schools have not decided what they're going to do yet. So their parents are holding their kids back as far as scheduling them too heavy until they know what they're going to be doing. So we're just going to be on the ready when things start to happen, and we'll go forward from there.
Yeah, it's curious. So what are your thoughts about having a choice so you can choose where you want to send your kid? I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think the schools should be open and then let parents and families choose what they want to do about that. Yeah. If the school districts are going to provide an online curriculum for those who don't feel comfortable going back to school, I think that's okay. I also know a lot of parents that are going to be homeschooling this year too, because they just don't feel comfortable with either way. So
would the program that you have qualify? I guess they haven't worked out the details of that yet. So if you choose not to send your kid to the public school and then they end up giving you that money back, I guess.
Do you really think that's going to happen?
I do. I really do.
Really?
I think,
really?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that it's going to be a big deal. I really do. I think this is really opened a door for that possibility. More news.
That would be nice.
More news at 11. I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net. And you can find our guest's show page there today. And on that show page is a very special link that will take you to he's got an audio book and he has a meditation. What would you call it? An MP3 that you can listen to. And we're going to talk more about that. While you're at the website, check out the newsletter. You can sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter goes out once a week. Jackie spends a good deal of time creating that and making sure it's presentable. She also writes a blog post.
I change its clothes every week.
You up. And she also creates a blog post that talks about the show that we portrayed that week. Goodness, I'm coming up with all kinds of good stuff.
Sounds like you've been under anesthesia like me. My brain's a little slow last week.
Pick a word. While you're there, sign up for that newsletter. We just use that email address for that newsletter. It talks about who's been on the show, who's coming on the show, and of course the blog post I just talked about. You can check out my book while you're there. 6 Keys to Life Mastery, Unlocking the Skills for Successful Living. It's a really cool book. I really like it. You'll like it too. Once you do read it and like it, go to Amazon and leave some comments. I really love to hear those comments and that feedback. And there's another book cooking inside me, I think. So that will help me with the next book, right? That's the way that works.
That's the way it works.
Okay. Are we done cleaning house? I think so. You ready for our guest?
Absolutely. I think that the audience is going to love Patrick's voice. And when they know that he's recorded meditation, they're going to be all about that.
Yeah, it is really cool. Our guest today is Dr. Patrick Wanis. Am I saying that right, Patrick Wanis?
Well, here's the question. Do you want us or don't you want us?
We do want us.
We got it. Rhymes with Quanis. Okay, we'll quit. Patrick Wanis has served as the human behavior and relationship expert for American Media Minimags, the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children, Comcast Dating on Demand. That's pretty cool. I didn't even know they had that. He has been featured and quoted on CNN, Fox News, MSN, and magazines as diverse as Cosmos, Rolling Stone, USA Today, In Touch Weekly, The Inquirer, New York Daily News, many, many others. Of course, the Women's Health and Men's Health magazines. It's all in Journey Recovery Magazine. Wanis has coached various celebrities. Now, I didn't realize that when we had him on the show before, but that's pretty cool. We're rubbing elbows.
Think he'll drop some names for us?
Let's see if he will.
Are you willing to pay?
To major corporations, appeared on radio and television. Of course, this is his second appearing on Life Master Radio. Published books on human behavior, relationships, and the mind, personal development. Over 5 million people have read his books in English and Spanish. He has a really cool audio book, and you will find the link on Life Master Radio. It's called Neutralize the 7 Emotions That Are Holding You Hostage. And I've listened to it twice. It's very good. It will have you thinking about how you react to your emotions. You know, Patrick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
You know, I think it makes a big difference when you listen to an audio book like that describes these emotions and puts you in you do such a great job putting the situation of how it manifests and how it pops up, how it works. I think that's huge because it brings to a person listening the awareness.
So there's a couple of points there. First, you want to be able to understand what each emotion is. So if you're saying I'm feeling sad, do you really know what sadness even means?
Yeah, exactly.
And not many of us are actually taught the definition of the words. Once you understand the definition of each of these emotions, it shifts the way you look at the emotion.
Yeah.
And then I'll go to the next point. But step number 1 is, what is sadness? For example, sadness is triggered by a sense of loss. You feel that you've lost something that you had or something you thought you were going to have. Say, for example, you thought that you were going to get a promotion. Or think of students prior to the pandemic, who were looking forward to their graduation, then they're told there's no graduation. That's a loss. So they're feeling sadness as a result of not being able to graduate. So it can be something you already had in the present or something you thought you were going to have in the future. So I go through all of these emotions, through the core emotions and the core umbrella of emotions, and I clearly define them. So, if I'm feeling angry, what does that really mean? And for example, there's a huge difference between anger and frustration.
Right.
Anger is when you feel hurt, injured, or wronged, or you didn't get what you want. But frustration is when you feel thwarted because you're trying to get something, you're trying to achieve a goal, but there's constantly a block. There's something in your way saying, I'm really frustrated. I can't work this out. I don't know how to finish this. I've been trying to finish this project for so long, so I'm feeling frustrated. Now, something that I don't know, I don't recall if I said this in the audiobook. There's a very powerful key and secret and benefit to being able to label your emotions. I'm going to share this with your audience right now. So there are two things you can do when you're experiencing an intense emotion. And it's not to try and do affirmations or to deny the emotion. There's two. Here's technique number one. You say, as a matter of fact, I notice I'm feeling sad. That's interesting. Or I'm noticing I'm feeling sad. Why is that? Right. And you come up with the answer. Now, I've done this. I remember I was standing in the kitchen and suddenly this sense of sadness came over me and I went, whoa. And I said, I better use my technique. So I said, I notice I'm feeling sad. That's interesting. Why am I feeling sad? And I went, because I already had flashbacks of certain things that I did that I can't do again now. Maybe I'll never be able to do them again. But it was some of them was memories with people. Some of it was in the Florida Keys, and the Keys was blocked at the time. It was quarantined, etc. By saying I notice I'm feeling sad, I'm distancing myself from the emotion. I'm now not the emotion. I notice that I'm feeling sad. I'm the observer.
That's kind of using the third party perspective. That's the way I was taught, is to maybe grab that third party perspective and notice what you're noticing, and then try and, like you said, dig into what is it about that.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. We refer to it as third person talk.
Right.
And you can use the third person talk for technique number two, which is coaching yourself. So let's do it right now, and let's do it with Jackie because she hasn't said much. Well, because I'm doing all the talking, not you, Todd, of course. So
she's got her foot on a little scooter, and she's probably looking at her toes, is what's going on there.
No.
All right. Well, we're going to shift your focus. So, Jackie, could you describe to me who is Jackie Bailey, and describe her as a third person? Tell me who she is. What are her qualities, her characteristics, her talents?
Jackie Bailey is a leader. She is out in the community doing good things for people and trying to make a difference in the world. She's got great communication skills, and she's even been to an international contest and did very well at the contest.
Okay, and what is Jackie's greatest challenge?
She has many challenges, Jackie does. I think her greatest challenge is that she tends to do things on her own, and she doesn't involve the wonderful network of people that she has around.
So what advice would you give to Jackie? She needs to do what?
She needs to reach out more. She needs to connect more. She needs to quit worrying about the tasks that need to be done and actually build relationships that are right there at her fingertips.
So you said that her greatest challenge is to reach out to people. Are you saying to reach out to people to allow them to support her?
Yeah, I think reach out to, and just let people know more about what she's doing and how. I think if Jackie were to find a way to help people understand the benefits of the programs that she has available to them, I think that they would be more apt to be part of those programs. rather
think,
than,
okay.
yeah. So I think, go ahead.
Do you think that Jackie needs to believe in herself more?
Definitely.
All right. So what would you say to her about that?
I would say you got this. You know, there's ups and downs in everything. Keep focus on the ups and recognize that if you're in a down right now, it's going to come back up because it always does. So just believe in what you're doing.
Okay. What is Jackie's greatest quality and gift?
I think, wow. Jackie is definitely a doer. She's reliable. I mean, if you need Jackie's help, she's going to make sure that she gets things done as much as when you ask her to do stuff. She's reliable.
So is her greatest gift and talent the fact that she's reliable and dependable, or is it something else?
Oh, her greatest gift. I'm not sure then what you mean by that.
All right. What does she bring to the world that makes a difference? What's her greatest gift?
Jackie's greatest gift is that she has empathy for people who have been through traumatic experiences, and she can help them understand how to get to the other side of those experiences because she's been.
Fantastic. So Todd might tell me, how long were we doing this little exercise? Was it 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, it was just a couple minutes, I think.
All right.
Maybe, yeah, at the outside.
So about 3 minutes? Okay. Yeah. So Jackie, now tell me how you feel and what you learned from this exercise we just did.
It's an interesting perspective because I think if you had asked me, hey, Jackie, what do you think your greatest gift is? It would be really hard to answer that. But as you say, looking through the eyes of a third person, it made it a little bit easier to see yourself in a different way. And so I do need to take the advice of that person, I think.
What about the encouragement and coaching you gave to yourself? How do you feel about that? What's your response?
I think it was helpful. I feel like maybe I need to do that more for sure. Yeah.
So my humble suggestion to you is, now that you know how to do this exercise, although I was there to ask you some more questions, do it to yourself. Coach yourself. Because there's a difference if you're doubting yourself, or you already know you have a problem receiving or asking for help and support. You can't just stand in the mirror and affirm and say, I ask people for help, I ask people for support. That doesn't work. But if you're saying to yourself, it's okay to ask, Jackie, it's okay to ask for help and support. It's okay to allow people to help you. That doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger, because that means you believe so much in yourself and your own value that you're willing to be vulnerable. So coach yourself, because you do have the insights. The more you practice this exercise, the less there'll be of those long pauses, and the more that insights will come to you. They'll become more natural. Because if I would ask you to do exactly the same exercise with Todd, but not ask him third person, meaning if I said to you, Jackie, how would you describe Todd? What do you think his greatest gift is?
Don't ask her that. No.
But if I ask you those 3 key questions, how do you describe Todd? What are his greatest gifts? What is his greatest challenge? You'd have them all listed.
Right.
Because we're accustomed to being able to read other people, or reading other people, or making perceptions and interpretations. We're not accustomed to doing that to ourselves, and yet we already have an inbuilt identity, an inbuilt self-concept that was formed primarily during our childhood, and then we built upon it and reshaped it. So if you want to change it, go from the third person, and you'll get less resistance.
What is it about that, Patrick? What is it that doesn't allow us? What blocks us from that introspective outlook, right? I mean, we tear off into life and we just think, oh, I don't matter. But yet, look at this other person. They're pretty cool. I really like what they do, and I like the way they act. But we don't give ourselves credit. Does that come from somewhere, or is that just a natural thing that we block that off?
All right, so I think there were about 7 questions, but I'll answer.
I know. It got my mind going. I was like, whoa.
I'll answer the primary question. If I understand you correctly, the primary question is, what causes us to not believe in ourselves? What causes us to have doubt in ourselves? And it's all stemmed from our childhood. And what that primarily means is that children learn 4 ways. They watch, they copy what they see. They listen, they believe what they're told. Even though you think your child's not listening, they are. The third way that children learn is they have an individual experience and they make an inaccurate interpretation about that experience. And I'll explain all of these in a bit more detail. Number 4, they absorb the primary emotions or the dominant emotions of the household or the emotions of the person with whom they most resonated. If the person you connected with the most was anxious, you'll end up having anxiety. If the dominant emotion in the household was anger, you're either going to have a lot of anger or you're going to react to anger or be very afraid of anger. If you watched your parents smoke, there's a good chance you're going to smoke. So I remember this growing up. Parents would go, don't smoke, don't smoke. And the children go, okay, I won't smoke. Okay. I won't smoke. But separate to that, the parent says to the child, you're smart, you're good, you're intelligent, you're a hard worker. So the child goes, oh, okay, that's my identity. I'm smart, I'm a hard worker, and I'm good. I'll keep living that out. But if the parent says to the child, you're an idiot, why'd you do that? That's not good enough. That's not for us. Why aren't you more like your brother? Why aren't you more like your sister? Why aren't you this or that? The child believes those things, and those things start to form the identity, the self-concept.
Wow.
So that's watch and copy, listen and believe. The third is the inaccurate interpretation that children make because children believe they're the center of the universe. They believe that they cause and create everything. Because from the moment that a child's born, particularly as far as mum's concerned, it starts with mum, then it becomes dad and everyone else around. Child makes a face, and what does everyone do? They make the same face back. Or the child smiles and mum smiles. Or the child laughs and everyone laughs. So the child thinks, oh, I'm making mummy smile. I'm making mummy laugh. Therefore, I'm making mummy angry. Mummy's angry and shouted at me. That's because of me. That's my fault. So children really do believe that they cause and create everything around them. So unfortunately, when parents divorce, children blame themselves. If a parent abandons the child or isn't there or isn't attentive, the child thinks that's because of me. That's my fault. Mm. The other reason that a child performs that way is because in the first few years, they're primarily operating off the subconscious mind. The prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is the executive decision maker, that's the logical, analytical, reasoning faculty, develops over time. It doesn't fully develop until you're in your early 20s, later for boys than for girls. So children in the early years will believe everything you say because they have no real way of analyzing it. And I've done this distinguishing between what's a story, what's imagination, and what's the truth.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
And Chris and I were talking about this in another interview we gave where I said children are literal. So if you say to the child you're smart, they believe that. If they say to the child, you're an idiot, why'd you drop that? The child hears, I'm an idiot, I dropped that. So with Chris's kids one time when I was staying at his house in Houston, because he's got twins, and I think at the time this happened, they were probably 8 or 9. So I wake up in the morning and I love to play games with them, particularly because children are just imaginative anyway. So I said to them, and I think there was something wrong with the water. There was no water from the faucet, from the tap. And they want to go and tell mum. They said, there's no water. I go, yeah, I'm sorry about that, Alan, but I drank all the water. I said, what? I drank all the water. What? I drank all, no, you didn't. Yes, Alan, I drank all the water. In fact, if you go to the next door neighbors, call your next door neighbors, there's no water. I was really thirsty. I'm so sorry. I woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning and I was very thirsty and I drank all the water. Now, Alan goes running upstairs and says, Daddy, Patrick drank all the water. What are we going to do? He believes me. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, later on, they can say, look, I was just joking. But it's a great way to explain to people the principle that children take to heart, as we say, to take to heart. They actually believe what you say about them. Yeah. So If a child makes a mistake, say, listen, this was a mistake. Let's learn how to do this. But when you start labeling the child takes on that label and becomes part of their identity. And because of the egocentricity that I cause everything around me, if the parent doesn't have time for the child or isn't giving the child a lot of attention, then the child thinks I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, there's something wrong with me, I'm an outsider, I don't belong, I feel separate, I feel disconnected. So there's an example today with a client, a new client, her first session, and she experiences the death of her brother in her early years, meaning when she's a teenager, and she can't go to her parents because she's already been programmed, because she copies her parents and because of the way they raised her. At age 14, she already believes that she's not meant to share. She's not meant to open up and share because the father doesn't open up and share. The mother doesn't open up and share. In fact, the mother's a perfectionist and the mother's very strict and judgmental and mean at times. So the image that this little girl has, the image the 36-year-old client has of herself as a teenager is sitting in the room, back against the wall, and has a subconscious belief, I shouldn't take up too much space, I'm not worthwhile. So these are all subconscious beliefs that we create. Every one of us has created it. If I may say this in the gentlest way possible, even with Jackie, you saw her expressing a lack of belief in herself. I promise you I could trace that back to somewhere. It's not something that we do randomly. I remember when I first started working as a therapist, I was actually doing hypnotherapy, and I was uncomfortable charging $80 because I didn't believe in myself. Right. Now, the link between not charging a lot and believing myself was because I grew up doing counseling and therapy for my parents for free because they constantly asked me. I'm talking about when I was a teenager. They would ask me for my advice. And then because my parents, my dad, gave me all of these tasks at home, I don't mean mowing the lawns, I mean huge projects of laying parquet and then getting up 5 o'clock in the morning over school holidays because we built this huge entertainment room that was probably bigger than 1,200 square feet, probably 1,600 square feet. And I had to sand the walls and varnish the walls and layers of varnish, but I did it on my own. And my dad would say, listen, you can't go to your grandma's house, which was in another state, until you get all of this done. And this isn't, hey, do it now and you can go in the afternoon. This is a project that would take a week. So I would do this for a whole week, and the reward was, now you can go and visit your grandma. Mm. It wasn't, Patrick, it wasn't encouragement. Oh, you've done a great job. I can see, wow, this is really good. You were disciplined. You showed resourcefulness. You showed devotion. You showed commitment. Well done. I congratulate you. I'm also looking at the outcome, the result. You paid a lot of attention to detail. The technique was there, et cetera, et cetera. Now let me reward you. Here is something such as money so that you learn, you work, you get paid. Right. I was taught you work, you don't get paid. So I just assumed that's what I'm meant to be doing. So I would do all of this stuff for free because I didn't believe, I just didn't believe you don't get paid. I believed I didn't deserve to get paid. So these are just, a few examples I'm pulling up to say we all have subconscious beliefs that drive us.
So I don't want to interrupt you, but these beliefs and habits that we develop as kids, I think it's with your system, subconscious rapid transformation technique. Yeah. And what I learned was it's not that difficult. It's not that hard.
Correct.
To transform and pop these out of your head. Is that right?
Correct. So, for example, one client today, I already referenced her, but her trauma was the death of her brother at age 14. And so the first thing I'm telling her before we start the session, or at the beginning of the session, I'm saying, in this process, I'm going to make sure that you don't relive any pain. And I've got all of these things in place that I'm going to do so that you can do that third person talk, because we're going to be talking to the image that you have of the little child, the teenager, so that you don't relive any pain. Then what I do is I bring in new wisdom, new understanding, new evidence to that belief. So this little girl had a belief that when her brother died, she said, I have to be everything and I have to make up for his death. She's been living that her whole life. So then I present evidence to say to her, well, what's the role of a parent? The role of a parent is to give everything to the child that he or she needs to realize his or her full potential. So I said, what do you think the child's role is? And she's stumped. So I repeated, I say, the parent's role is to give to the child everything that he or she needs to realize his or her full potential. So what do you think the role of the child is? To learn? I said, that's part of it. Let's look at it again. If the parent is giving, what's the role of the child? She says, to take. And I said, taking is part of it. I said, what you've just told me, the way you worded it, is that you're not good at receiving because you called it taking. You didn't say receiving. So therefore, you have a problem receiving. Is that true or not? She says, yes, that's true. As I continue presenting some evidence about and I say to her, tell this little girl that she's just a child. She's special, she's wonderful, she's extraordinary, but you're just a child. And you aren't responsible for your parents, for the adults around you. They're supposed to be taking care of you, not you taking care of them. And then, boom, she says, there was a pause on it. And I said, what happened? She says, a light just went off. And now she recognizes that's not the role. She doesn't need to have that role anymore. Now, that's just one of the multiple things that we did in a session of an hour and 30 minutes.
Right.
Without reliving pain. Now, she did have intense emotion at certain points, and I have to say to her, whoa, stop. Why are we here? What's the purpose? And she'll repeat what I'd said to her at the beginning. We're here to help this little girl. We're here to help little Todd. We're here to help little Jackie. We're here to help little Patrick. Because when you start thinking third person and you think, I'm here to help a child, you're already thinking the child is helpless, or at least the child doesn't have the skills that I have. And because you're separating and you're an adult helping a child, you're not in the emotion, you're trying to help someone who has that emotion. So constant separation, constant observation, constant distancing, constant disassociation. And then at the same time, I'm going to contradict what I said, there is interaction, but instead of getting stuck in the emotion, you're going to express compassion to the child. You're going to give to the child what they didn't get. So when I say to little Jackie, it's okay, I'm here, and I'm here to help you. And I change in each session. I come up with different terms and things. I said, how does little Jackie respond? And the client says, she feels already relieved that someone is here and sees her. Now I already know what one of her core issues is. She felt invisible. She didn't feel seen. So this is the way we do it, or the way that I do it in subconscious rapid transformation technique. So you can quickly change those beliefs, release those emotions, but express more compassion, more patience, and reaffirm to the younger version of you, I do see you, I do hear you, I do listen to you, I'm right here with you, I do care about you, et cetera, et cetera. When you did at the beginning, you did the gratitude exercise. Breathe in, close your eyes. What are you grateful for? And because I've got the view of the ocean right now, I went sunlight, ocean. And then I went, I'm grateful for my health, grateful for my strength. And then I said, I'm grateful for my gift to be able to help people. Because there's an extraordinary sense of gratification and fulfillment when in 90 minutes with this client who was referred to me incidentally by another therapist. She came to me and she said to me, this therapist has been asking me to come to you for a year. And then I watched you in an interview and I decided I better go because her issue was trauma. And the way that I explained to him, I said, you don't have to relive the pain. But when you're able to help someone and to shift and to see their life from a different perspective, so they've got awareness of how they've been living, but they've let go of a couple of beliefs and they're healing the relationship with dad and with mum and with themselves, that's an extraordinary. That to me is like getting a gift of $1 million because there's a feeling of, oh, I do have significance because I'm actually making a difference. I'm contributing to people. I'm helping people.
Fascinating. It's fascinating that you get results so quick.
Well, and the reason I think it is because I don't label people. See, the reason that I've always been very, even though I have a PhD in health psychology, I'm very anti the mainstream of the teachings, because the first way that all of these therapies are guided is to deal with the symptom. Whether we're talking about medicine, psychology, or psychiatry, it's the symptom. Oh, you're depressed. Here, take this pill because we believe that it will do something to your symptom. And with the false concept that it's an imbalance in the chemistry of the brain, and even if it is an imbalance in the chemistry of the brain, you think you're rebalancing it, but you're creating an imbalance in all these other areas. And now this person has all these other physical and biological and mental and emotional side effects,
which are not actually good. Chemical imbalance, right?
Right. And what's worse to me is I had a client who came to me. She'd been on like 11 medications over about 7 or 8 years. And I've heard this every time from clients who've been on medication. They say, I'm on the medication. I'm not depressed anymore, but I just don't feel like I'm myself. I don't know who I am.
Lights are on, but nobody's home.
Because you're not actually helping the person to connect to their core. You're giving them something to blunt them, to numb them, so they don't feel anything. So they go, I don't feel anything. So one of the challenges, I said, is that therapy is often taught to deal with the symptom, whether that's psychiatry, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis. I mean, okay, with psychoanalysis, you're going to say, let's go back to childhood. Okay, began there. All right, great. But what do I do now? Oh, well, at least we know that the reason you don't believe in yourself is because your dad used to hit you. Okay, thanks for that. How much do I owe you? Fantastic. Oh, how many more times do I need to come back? Every week for the next 4 years? I'm really excited. I can't wait. But if we say, okay, the reason you doubt yourself is because your dad hit you, and then you believed because your dad hits you, you deserve to be hit, or there's something wrong with you, or because your dad hit you, you believed you can't trust people, and then you believed you should rebel against authority, and then you believed that you're not good enough and you're not lovable because your dad hit you and you lost connection with your dad. Great. Now we've actually got 10 beliefs we've uncovered from this one incident. Now let's take them apart piece by piece. But I don't want you reliving the pain because what I teach, and I don't usually need to say this to the client, but sometimes I do. I cannot help you to change that belief or to release that pain whilst you're in the pain. Because we need to create a new neural pathway, and we can't create that whilst you're in the pain. But if you stand back third person and look at it, you've now just, you're not aware of this, but what you're really doing is you're actually teaching yourself, I can separate myself from the emotion. I'm not the emotion. I'm not the thought. I'm having the thought, but I'm not the thought. Now, let me share this with you, Todd and Jackie. This was mind-blowing to me because it's just started happening to me. And I don't know what's changed in the last couple of nights, but I'm dreaming. And I had a thought, some weird dream that I'm leaving someone else's house. And I need to jump or I need to come down. And I'm saying I'm afraid. Now, you're not going to believe what I do. In the dream, I say to myself, but it's just a thought and I'm not the thought.
Wow.
And I went, wow, did I just do this? And then I see myself holding onto the limb of the tree and climbing down without any fear. I'm like, bloody hell, how do I do this?
Wow.
I've got to do this again. And it's happened to me like 2 nights in a row.
There are some that say that you can get to that point where you are actually directing your dreams. You are consciously aware. Yeah. No, there's some really good books. I've interviewed a couple people about that, and it's
well, I know it's called lucid dreaming and being able to control your dreams, but to be able to do that to the extent where I didn't plan it out, I didn't prepare it, but the dream happened and I redirected it by telling myself it's just a thought. I'm not the thought. I was like, wow, this is really cool.
You know, I had that same experience, Patrick, when I figured out, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what I was doing. I was walking across a crosswalk. I know what intersection it is. But halfway through that intersection, I came to the realization that I could choose my thoughts. And that was like a mind blower that I could choose what to think about. You know, before that, before all this work that I did on myself and looking at myself, I was just like a robot walking around reacting to things that occurred in my life rather than choosing them.
It's a great point. And this is what I teach in the audio book, Neutralize the 7 emotions that are holding you hostage right now, that there are only 2 things you can control, your thoughts and your emotions. You can control your emotions because if you feel angry, as you said, you either react to them, or as we've been teaching in today's session, or today's interview, sorry.
I've been learning something. Oh my gosh.
As we've been teaching, if you are feeling angry, you can say, I notice I'm feeling angry. That's interesting.
Huge.
And then you keep calming the voice. I notice I'm feeling angry. That's interesting. Why am I feeling angry? Because I believe this. So I'm not reacting to the emotion. I'm saying I can see the emotion, therefore I'm not the emotion.
Diffuse it.
Yeah, I'm diffusing it by separating, disassociating, detaching, which is something that Buddhism also teaches in their own way. And by doing that, you start to recognize there's a thought. I'll put my hands here. There's a thought. There's an emotion. But I can separate from the thought and emotion. Therefore, I can control it. I also teach you came up with the thought. If you came up with a thought, you can create a new thought. Mm. It's not simple, but the more it's not easy. It is simple. Practice. The more you practice, the more control you'll have. I was doing yoga. Actually, it was yesterday morning. And the same thing, I had some thoughts while I'm doing yoga, and I said, I'm not the thought. I'm just having the thought. Boom, it went. I was like, whoa, hey, I think I'm going to become a human behavior expert. This is actually working. So the difference is, as you said, you were walking across the road, you had that revelation, that insight, there was a shift in the brain which said, I'm not the thought. And there's a part of our brain, I don't know where it is in the brain, but there's a part of us that is the observer effect. Yeah. The observer effect is, I observe myself feeling angry. I observe myself feeling tired. I observe myself feeling this or thinking that. When you can do that, then the emotion's not controlling you. You can control the thoughts and the emotions. Just more practice. When you have that thought that brings up the emotion, remind yourself, I'm not the thought, I'm having a thought. Remind yourself, oh, I notice I'm having this thought. The more you practice separating, the less control it has over you. Because as you said, Todd, we're either living in reaction to the thought, or we don't even know that thought is driving us. We don't even know that emotion is driving us. We're just constantly going with it. But when we stop and say, wait a minute, who's controlling you, Jackie? You go, well, I am. You sure? So if you're controlling you, where's the anger coming from? Oh, well, Todd made me angry. What did Todd do? How did he do? Did he wave a magic wand? No, you responded with anger. So you must have created it within you.
It's fascinating.
Doesn't mean you're a good or a bad person. It just means you have the power to change it. So again, my subconscious rapid transformation technique focuses on getting to the root cause, helping you to release the emotions, and there are processes to release the emotions that I do, and to change the belief without reliving any pain, without telling me your entire life story. I don't need to make you pay me 10 sessions to know where you grew up, how many brothers and sisters you have, what school you went to, what you got in your grades, and what college you went to. No, just tell me what it is right now that you want to change. What is it you want that you don't yet have? And a client will say, I want inner peace. How will you know when you have inner peace? I'll be less angry. Okay, great. So what is driving the anger? Give me an example when you're angry. Well, I get angry when my husband does blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that triggers anger. What does it remind you of? Reminds me of the way my father used to speak at me. Great. When you think back all the way to being a child, when the way your father spoke to you with your eyes open or your eyes closed, what memory comes to your mind? Oh, I remember a time when I'm standing in the hallway and my dad does blah. And there's the point. We got there. You can get there pretty fast because everything has an origin. With a client today, I helped her to understand that her mother, imagine a mother who for 30 days doesn't talk to her child who's under 10 because she's angry. And I said, your mum didn't just become this way. And even if you tell me there was some mental illness, she didn't just become this way. Something happened to her. And then we dig deeper, and then we realize, and this has happened with me, and then with other clients I've had, there were clients who had postpartum depression over 3 and 4 pregnancies, but never got help and went from one pregnancy to the next with postpartum depression. What I know of that is it creates an extraordinary disconnect between the mother and the child.
Totally.
Because when you're depressed, you can't connect to anyone. You can't connect to yourself, let alone to your child. So now the children suffer. So my point is, everything has an origin. And if you say to me, what about a psychopath? Well, then we look at science, and science tells us that there's a gene called the warrior gene. I don't know why they call it, but they call it the warrior gene. But that warrior gene only gets triggered based on experiences in childhood. And the scientist that discovered that discovered it about himself. Imagine I don't remember his name. Imagine Todd is doing research into psychopathy and then discovers a warrior gene and then discovers, bloody hell, I've got that warrior gene. And then he says, well, that makes sense because some of my friends say that sometimes I'm very cold and I'm very callous and I'm this and that. And then he says, well, what's the difference? Why does this person become psychopathic with the same gene, but this person doesn't? And they said, it's experiences in childhood. And that's what we call epigenetics, where something triggers the gene. So even if your parents were alcoholic or your parents had cancer, it doesn't mean you will. It depends on what else is in the environment that will trigger the opening or the opening of that gene. And then there's behavioral epigenetics. Behavioral epigenetics is where you inherit some of the personality traits and even some of the emotions of your grandparents or great-grandparents. But we can still heal that in SRTT because we pull up an image of a child and we say to the child, you're carrying your mum's pain or your grandma's pain. It's not your pain. You don't have to carry that anymore. It's a bizarre thing that I say, where in your body do you feel, where in the body of little Mary does Mary feel that old anger? She says, for example, in her chest. Is there a color associated with that old anger in her chest? Yes, it's red. How would little Mary like to let go now of that old red anger from her chest? Sometimes they'll say, I don't know. I'll say, is she willing? Yes. Then I'll offer some scenarios, put it in a box, tie it to a helium balloon, watch it fly away, etc. Then I'll say, has she done that? Yes. Is it all gone? And she'll say, no, perhaps. I'll say, okay, so connect with little Mary. Why is little Mary not willing to fully let go of all of that old red anger? And she most likely will say something like, that's all she knows. And then we realize that those emotions and those beliefs form part of the identity. And I said, well, that makes sense because she's been living with that anger for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and it formed part of her identity. So what does little Mary think would happen if she let go of that anger? What is she afraid of? She says she doesn't know who she would be because it's part of her identity. It's what she's familiar with. Then I'll say, well, what could we replace it with? What's the opposite of anger? Might be patience. Whatever the client comes up with, because I'm working with what their belief system is. And they might say love, they might say joy, they might say patience, tolerance, and courage, whatever it is. And I'll say, well, so how would little Mary like to let go of all of that anger, knowing she's safe because she'll fill it up with love or joy or peace or patience? Then they're able to let go of it. And
that's the other
changes.
That's the other part, Patrick. And I want to get Jackie in here because Jackie's just been sitting there so calm and peaceful, big smile on her face. I don't think I've heard her ask one question. She's reeling from the effects of knowing who Jackie is.
This is great. It's very interesting.
I must say, no wonder we're such close friends is because I think we were cut from the same rug. Because she was describing me kind of, sort of, in a way.
Yeah.
And Patrick, I'm sorry, I forgot what was spurring this question, but it was
about letting go and replacing,
and having that ability, and because we get I know what it is. We get attached to feeling the grief. That's kind of what I was trying to describe.
Feeling the grief,
feeling the anger. We don't want to lose that.
Okay, so let's address that too, because there's a reason we get stuck to each emotion. If we're attached to the grief, then I've got to look at what's the accompanying belief, because this is very important. This is very insightful as well. If we're talking about the grief with the loss of a loved one, we have these other beliefs, such as survivor's guilt. Oh, Robert died. My uncle, who I loved so much, died. I survived. There might be guilt because I survived the accident and he didn't. Or we have this weird belief that says, I'll honor my uncle by me suffering. I'll continue suffering because if I'm having joy, then people will think that I didn't love my uncle, or I'll think I didn't love my uncle, because it's not fair that he's dead and I'm having a great time and I'm living life to its fullest. So I've got to look at that belief and say, why are you holding on to grief? Oh, because you think at a subconscious level that you're honoring your grandma or your aunt or your uncle or even your mum or dad by being miserable. But what did they really want? What was their wish for you? You told me that they really believed in you. You told me that they loved you and wanted the best for you. So do you think that they're up in heaven or wherever you think they are celebrating that you're miserable? Or do you think you could actually honor the life that they lived and what they gave to you by fulfilling their wish of living life to its fullest? Because their wish for you was good, not bad. Their wish for you was love, joy, success, and happiness, not misery, pain, and depression, and suffering and hurt. Could you connect to the joy that they gave you, the love they expressed, rather than connecting to the pain you felt when they passed? Because all you're doing really now is reliving that moment when you were told they're gone, rather than reliving all of those moments when you were with them. So do you want to imagine them by your side, or do you want to imagine them gone and dead and they've contributed nothing and everything they did was a waste? So I adjust my approach based on the client as to, will I be gentle? Will I present this? Will I present that? Most of what I present comes up in the moment. Yeah. So that I can help you.
That's a huge talent. My big shout out to you, Patrick, for being able to do that on the fly. I guess it's just experience, and you have a great technique. I think it's really cool. We just have a couple of minutes left, Patrick. I am so grateful you came back. I hope you'll come back. I think we have another couple hours that we can talk. And next time we'll let Jackie talk more.
Well, and what we'll do next time is we'll ask Todd more questions so that he coaches himself, right, so we can see what he has.
I'm sick that day. I think I'll be sick.
Well, I need to clarify something, because you said that a gene can be created from these emotions that we have from experiences. Is that literal? Is our DNA changed from our experiences?
Okay, so there's epigenetics, which means there's dormant genes that get triggered based on the environment. Then there's behavioral epigenetics, and behavioral epigenetics refers to, in fact, there's an article, which I'll see if I can find the link, that you actually might inherit through the genes emotions, personality traits, and even pain from someone in your lineage. Your mum's died, your dad, so it could be a grandparent or great-grandparent. So if there's some reason that you can't find anything very clearly in childhood, there's a chance that you may have inherited something in the gene, and that is science. And it's called behavioral epigenetics.
We have to go, Patrick. I'm so sorry. I want to have you back. Please check out today's show page. You'll find a link to Patrick's ebook or his audiobook and a meditation seed. We didn't even get a chance to talk about that. That will
next time.
Yeah, next time we'll talk about that. It's 20 minutes long, and with his voice, his amazing voice, it will take you down a path of relaxation and peace and tranquility. Yay! Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. Please tell your friends about it. And lastly, please make it a great day, because it's all about choice. And you're going to choose to check out Patrick. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. I don't hear any music.
Cam, are you asleep at the wheel?
All righty.
Is Cam okay?
I don't know.
I hope so.
It still says live, so I think
I know.
I know.
We've got dinner.